Friends, how you doing? We are live. Great to see you here on this early Monday afternoon. It is Monday, August the 11th. Rusty back with you here. CFLW, the show. A lot to get into here. Going to be an active forecast for us locally. We've got a lot to talk about in the tropics as well with newly formed tropical storm Erin. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below what's been happening in your area, what the weather has been like. As we get started, please remember CFLW, the show is sponsored by the leading law firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It's storm season. A storm moves across your area. Wind, hail, hurricane damage. Look, to cover the entire state of Florida. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. Go to leanonmelaw.com if you guys would like more information. Apologies for being a couple of minutes late. If you have kids or you have grandkids, you probably know that today is the first day of school in a lot of Florida, including here in Orange County. And right around 12:50, I got a phone call from my kid's school, which is never great the first day of school. Our younger son has some allergies and he carries EpiPens, and there was some confusion as to that. So it took past 1 o'clock to explain to the office exactly what was going on with that. Kind of first day of school things to iron out. But anyway, that's why I'm a couple of minutes late. It's life. Good to see you guys. How we doing this afternoon? Hey, Chessie, 92 degrees. Hi, Therese, how are you? Hey, Kish, good afternoon to you. Hey, Blue Goose, how you doing? Hey, Florida Investor. Hi, Nancy. Great to see you guys. Thanks for coming into the chat. Thanks for taking a quick second, hitting that like button and subscribing. So we're going to get into the tropics relatively quickly. I think that's just an interesting story to kind of break down. Obviously, the first thing I want to do is look at the current conditions across Central Florida. Obviously, we'll look at the forecast for the next couple of days. I've got some city-by-city forecasts to break down. We'll look at the models as well. You know, we're getting a couple of showers to develop here. Again, it's still a very moisture-laden atmosphere. We're still going to very efficiently fire off showers and storms later today. They're not going to be as numerous in nature as what they have been over the last few days. Still could see some locally heavier downpours. Still can't rule out a strong thunderstorm with some wind gusts of over 40 miles an hour. Now, we've had some excessive rainfall in some areas over the weekend. Southern Pinellas County yesterday, there were some areas that had more than 10 inches of rain. There was a very significant flood threat for a very small area of Southern Pinellas County, but noted that yesterday. So hopefully no one in the chat was impacted by that. East Coast sea breeze is beginning to march on shore. You can clearly see the showers beginning to develop just west of I-95 with that, and the southern sides of Brevard County through portions of Indian River County, the Grand Valkyria, Fellsmere area, and off towards the west. Again, just the first initiation of the showers here past the 1 o'clock hour. A couple of showers and storms hanging off the west coast as well. Again, can't rule out a couple of coastal showers for Pinellas and Manatee and Sarasota counties, even up towards Pasco and Hernando counties, but most of that activity is staying offshore. It is another humid afternoon. Temperatures right now have already reached the lower 90s in a couple of spots. You factor in the humidity, the feels like temperatures again are going to get into the low triple digits in a lot of areas, 103 to 105 in a lot of spots. There will be some peaks though. You can see up here in the Edgewater, New Smyrna Beach area, feels like temperature there at 108 at the hour. They're sitting at 90 degrees with an 81 degree dew point. Their relative humidity is 75%. When it's that hot and humid, a 75% relative humidity is not pleasant. There's even hotter feels like numbers a little bit farther off to the south. Inland, Hillsborough County, Plant City, feels like temperatures in at 105. So it's a steamy afternoon. It's not as exceptionally hot as it's been, but I mean, still, do you really want to be outside for many hours in the day if you're going to have that kind of a feels like temperature in the afternoon? The answer is probably no. Now, one reason why the West Coast had the significant rain that they had yesterday is we do have a bit of a spin in the eastern side of the Gulf. It's a mid-level spin. At this point in time, the Hurricane Center is not highlighting it for anything, but it is an area of enhanced lift in the atmosphere, and you can see that trough line in orange. It is pulling away from our area, but you know, there's a decent little spin there. So it's been a very wet day across the Big Bend in the eastern panhandle. It's pulling out of the area, but we will pick up south winds, and you can see that brushing along the west coast. So our west coast areas could see some shower activity develop out of that region as it begins to pull away. The European model did have a very small development chance tropically with this system. Doesn't look like that's going to ultimately happen for us here, but that's one reason why we really had the wet weather across our west coast and some isolated spots where the showers just trained one after another and caused all the flooding from yesterday. But that's the interesting feature from here. Otherwise, it will be for the next couple of days. Our sea breeze showers and storms, still a bit of an enhancement in the atmosphere, still expecting some widespread activity for us here. And again, some stronger storms with some gusty winds as well. Let me jump back into the chat, say hi to everyone. Hey, Blue Goose, how you doing? 95 degrees, a 58% humidity under partly cloudy skies. You need the rain, Blue Goose. I tell you what, it's feast or famine in a lot of spots, right? There have been areas that have had really heavy rainfall and others that are still looking for some of those showers. Of course, we have live cameras here at CFLW. Let's take a look at those on this Monday afternoon, and we can help tell the weather story in that way. That's the live look outside to Winter Garden in western Orange County. Notice that most of the development of the cloud coverage is very flat in nature right now. We're not really building in a lot of, cumulus clouds at this point in time, really flat. So at this point in time, the atmosphere is still relatively stable in interior sections, but as the East Coast sea breeze begins to march onshore, we'll start to see that vertical development and start to squeeze out pretty efficiently some showers and storms. You'll see that difference when you look from this camera. So that camera was looking west. This is looking east. As the East Coast sea breeze begins to initiate, you'll see just a little bit more in vertical development with some of this cloud coverage. Now, these are still fair weather clouds, those nice puffy cotton ball clouds for us here. Live look to Codway, no threat in the short term for any rain moving into the metro Orlando area. But of course, we'll be monitoring as these showers continue to push off towards the east. And a live look outside to the attractions. Again, a little bit of vertical development to cloud coverage here as we're looking back towards the south. Of course, the attractions, the Magic Kingdom and the Disney property just 1 mile from this camera. Always a great camera to keep an eye on. As we know, regardless of the time of day, there's a lot of folks out in Lake Buena Vista enjoying the attractions outdoors. So we always have to monitor the situation there. Now, this is going to be a little bit different live stream. Obviously, we're going to be covering Central Florida weather for you guys here, and obviously looking at the short term, and that's what this live Monday and Friday show is about, right? Being a live only channel, we only jump on when there's impactful weather, but this is to give you guys a heads up as to what I'm thinking for the coming days, when and where we could have some strong storms, some impactful weather, but obviously this time of the year, talking about the tropics as well. So let's get into that. If you don't know, over the weekend, we had the really first vigorous tropical wave develop off of the west coast of Africa. This has quickly formed and is now Tropical Storm Erin. The Hurricane Center began initiating advisories on Tropical Storm Erin. Let's see here, there we go, as of 11 a.m., so just 2 hours ago. So we do have a tropical storm, but let's be clear. They've already bumped this puppy up to 45-mile-an-hour winds, right? It is moving quickly to the west at 22 miles an hour. This is the infrared satellite imagery. You can see some blow up of some deeper convection associated with this. Erin already looks pretty darn fantastic, and it has just come off of the West African coast earlier this weekend. It still has to traverse the entire main development region of the Atlantic. So I'm going to just take off this red area because really it's already developed. We don't even need to look at that anymore. But to kind of break this down for you guys through the week, right? Just as we go through the week ahead, this is the track and the cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center. But as we get to Friday, I want to be very clear. The Hurricane Center has this becoming a major hurricane, all right? Now, it might take a little bit of time to develop because it's going through some slightly cooler waters in the eastern Atlantic. But once it hits the central southern Atlantic and into the western Atlantic, sea surface temperatures are outrageously hot. There's going to be very little wind shear, and it is forecast already to become a major hurricane. Let's be clear. The models the last 5-10 years have been fantastic on the tracks of these storms. They have been egregiously bad when it comes to the strength, the intensity guidance, because the models still can't handle how rapidly these storms can intensify. And it's such a blessing and a curse with all the new model data and information that we have and all the high resolution satellite imagery, because we can see these storms even before they're coming off the coast, and the models really start to hone in on them and start to paint a picture of this becoming a system to really monitor. So you get a lot of misinformation and misguidance because the models don't even have a great handle on this until you get a true low-level center to form. And that really just happened late last night and early today. So now that we have a true center, now that the tropical models are beginning to run in on this, I think we're going to have a lot better idea of what's going to be happening. But again, to be clear, this is nearly 3,000 miles away from us right now. It's at least 2,500 miles away. We have ample time to monitor what could be happening. But down the road, as of the 5-day track, you do start to nudge it close to the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Now, it's good to see that the only side of this that could nudge into this area is the far southern extent of that cone of uncertainty. And we'll take a look at the models coming up. But there is going to be two different camps when it comes to the models. You're going to be seeing, when I show you guys, some of the GFS models that have a nice recurve and taking it well away from the Bahamas and the United States East Coast, of course, including our East Coast, and others that have the Bermuda High more solidly in place, pushing westerlies farther west, not having a weakness on the southwest side, and allowing there to be a farther west track into early next week. But the earliest time frame that this would be even a concern for us would be about this time next week. Okay, but this is the first one that is taking a lower latitude track, and that is forecast to become a hurricane. This is the first major storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. Hey Charles, how you doing? Good afternoon to you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. 84, feels like 91, 75% humidity. Appreciate it. Nassau in the house, New Providence. Hi Larry, how you doing as well? Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for taking a quick second. Drop it in the chat. Let me know where you're coming from. If you have any specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. Of course, while you're down there, thanks for taking a quick second and hitting the like button as well. So that's the latest on Erin with the first track from the National Hurricane Center. Now look, it's not going to shock me if ultimately Erin can become even stronger than this, right? It's got ample time in the Atlantic Basin to continue to strengthen, especially after Wednesday when it gets into the warmer sea surface temperatures. Let me show you the models associated with this, guys. So I'm going to switch over to, this is going to be the, by the way, we do have two other areas, but they're not going to have any issues with us. That's 96L, which probably will never form. It looked a lot better last week. So I'm going to take this out. Should here with the GFS only have to go out about a week. And let me bring on the model timeline so you guys can see that as well. So just going to show you, this is going to be your GFS deterministic model, right? You've got the deterministic, which is the main run of the models. It's the ones that when you guys watch me here or watch other platforms, you'll see that run. However, there are ensemble members that run out of all of these models as well, okay? And the reason why they do that is because, you know, the deterministic model is kind of the main crunch of the models. It's the most, you know, data that goes into things. But, you know, we understand that some of the initial conditions in the atmosphere are just estimated, right? So you could start with bad initial conditions on the deterministic run and just end up getting a pretty bad model run. So you have 30 to 50 ensemble members that run on the global models that each have slightly different initial conditions and thus will each spit out slightly different tracks, you know, and basically, you know, what's going to be happening over the next 5 to 7 days with this storm and beyond. You know, the models can go out weeks at times, depending on which one you're talking about, but that's why you have these ensemble members. Now on this GFS deterministic, I want you to see how closely, so the Hurricane Center is basically following right now the envelope of the GFS deterministic for where Erin is likely to go through Friday, okay? And this would actually even be through Saturday morning, but you get the idea, and you notice that the strengthening just based on that reflectivity with a clearly defined eye by late Friday and into Saturday, okay? So it's right down the center line. Now from here, the GFS model is going to start a recurve, okay? Let me be clear about something. The model, the main model run from late last night was east of Bermuda with this recurve happening even earlier. So there has been a shift west. there is still a good buffer between what the GFS model wants to do with what would be Major Hurricane Erin in our East Coast. But that buffer is less than what it was just 12 hours ago. All right. So if I bring on this, our lovely spatial tool, and again, this is one model run. We're not putting anything in stone, but I'm helping you guys with the trends. You know, we've still got a nice 640 mile buffer zone from our East Coast to the western extent of what would be Major Hurricane Erin. But that was a few hundred more miles just 12 hours ago. Look, we're going to continue to get bobbles in these models and different solutions. We'll see. What ends up happening is you get two camps with the models. You get the recurve camp, which takes it close to Bermuda, but then you have that camp that does take it into Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas and gets it very close to our East Coast. All right. So again, this is the latest, newest model run of the GFS deterministic, which basically follows the center line beginning on Wednesday. It gets a heck of a lot stronger, becoming a major hurricane, a clearly defined eye, and heads towards Bermuda, giving us no direct impacts. If we look at the winds associated with this, and I'll loop that up for you guys as well. Jump back over to the chat. Hey, Kyle, how you doing? Hey, appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're doing well. Hey, Kish. Hey, Neek. Well, Neek, that's why we're talking about this, right? Nothing is set in stone. Let me be extremely clear. You guys know this. This track is the first blush look at this. I don't think we're going to know whether it's going to recurve until very late this week, right? This will be an all eyes on situation. First of all, for my friends over on the Media Mundo channel, where I cover the Caribbean and the Bahamas, we're going to, if nothing else, have a very close brush with the Leeward Islands and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, where Jay is tuning in from. So Jay's going to have to keep a very close attention to that. And then the question is when it recurs, because here's the problem, right? As we get to next weekend, I want you to notice how strong this storm gets. If it doesn't recurve, there is a high likelihood of this being a major hurricane and strengthening more as it gets closer to us. I hope that's not the case, obviously, but if we look at, down the road here, so this is going to be Monday morning of next week at 2 a.m., right? You have, again, these are sustained winds that are right around major hurricane strength. You get to 111, we're right around there. And again, I'm telling you, we just go back to Milton last year. When Milton became a major hurricane, the GFS and the European model still had it as a tropical storm. So the fact that the GFS is already making this basically a near major hurricane or a major hurricane, high Cat 2, low Cat 3 on Sunday, and the Hurricane Center actually thinks it's going to happen on Friday, shows you that the Hurricane Center knows and understands, because they're smart people, that the models still aren't picking up on how quickly these storms are strengthening, and likely at this point, it's going to be stronger than what the GFS is showing, which is already high in Cat 2, low in Cat 3. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with a massive major hurricane somewhere in this area over the weekend. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple of the different models. Plenty of time to watch this. This is the first one to really keep an eye on. All right. So this is going to be your GFS ensemble members, okay? And this was the 0Z run. I believe I've got the 12Z, so even this information is slightly old, right? The black is going to be your center line from this. So you do have a lot of the GFS ensemble members recurving. You do have a few that pull it much closer to our area. Those would be the western outliers at this point in time. But even from this 0Z run, which will be updated to the 12Z run, you would see a slight shift west of the overall black line and some of these other members. But there's still a nice spread, right? You do have some recurves happening well before us, and you still have the vast majority not impacting directly our East Coast or the United States East Coast. That's good news, okay? Got to watch the trends, though. This is going to be the intensity forecast. And again, this intensity forecast has been so far under, but the fact that the official takes you to Cat 3, and there are others that are already brushing high-end Cat 3 to low-end Cat 4, give you an idea of what we could be seeing. And notice that the official, which is the black line, the OFCL, is actually on the high end of the suite of intensity forecast runs, should show you that the Hurricane Center, again, already understands the fact that most of these tropical models aren't going to pick up on how strong and how fast this is going to develop beginning on Wednesday. So they're on the higher end of this, and we'll probably just see these nudge up, all right? But again, first track from the Hurricane Center has this becoming a major hurricane. Neek, it could be. No, Therese, none of the cuts are impacting the hurricanes. I do know that some of the potential satellite data that was supposed to be cut off is no longer being cut off, and that information is still flowing freely. And I believe a lot of the potential cuts were still in committee and hadn't been fully executed. I haven't been paying as much attention, but for some of the meteorologists that I know and follow on social media, it's my understanding that there hasn't been a lot of impacts to the hurricane side of things. There's been more impacts to the local weather service offices, but not to the National Hurricane Center. The OFCL is what the Hurricane Center is showing, right? Yes, the track is likely to change. Now, let me be clear. The one thing that these models have been very good on lately is the track. When they put the 5-day forecast for Hurricane Milton on in Southwest Florida, it hit within 10 miles of their 5-day track. So, you know, I do put more weight in the track than I do with the intensity guidance, especially this far out. But that's a long way to travel. And typically speaking, you get 5 days out, your average error distance is something like 200 nautical miles. It's getting better. There's that opportunity. I don't want to get there yet. I want to show you guys the European AI model. So we looked at the GFS. I showed you the deterministic. I showed you its kind of overall spaghetti plots. This is the European AI model. So it's about the same as the regular European. Again, there is a artificial intelligence version of the European model that is new this year. To give you guys an idea, this is Erin. All of these plots that you see are Erin. It's just different locations and different intensities. So the Western suite of the ensemble members of the European model do have this directly impacting our area, but the vast majority have this away from us, some closer than others, right? So we would be on that like Western less than 10% envelope sweep from the European model. It has a recurve just like the GFS, generally a little bit farther west though, with more direct impacts potentially for the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, especially the Turks and Caicos and like the Southeast Bahamas before that recurve begins to happen. Now, some are still way out towards Bermuda, but others are a little bit closer. So you do get a little bit of a split. The European model is farther west because it has that ridge stronger and more amplified in the Atlantic, pushing this storm more due west before that recurve occurs, right? But we're still looking at right now being in that 10% or less probability of having direct impacts on the European model. But we've got to watch the trends, no doubt about it. And I think that's the last video I have for you guys on that. Okay, any questions about Erin? Let me know. We have plenty of time to monitor, but it is the first one to watch. At this point in time, there's absolutely no reason for you guys to be doing any kinds of special preparations for Erin. It's always great this time of the year, though, to be weather aware and to have that hurricane plan. You know, maybe this is a great reminder to go and look at that and update things. Make sure that if it's a situation either with Erin or some other storm down the road that you're prepared, you know, for hurricane season here in Central Florida. And obviously I'm going to keep you guys updated through the week. You guys know that, but not expecting there to be, again, any impacts to us through this week. This would be a kind of early to mid next week if it were going to bring any impacts to us. So let's talk about what is going to be happening here over the next couple of days. First thing I want to do is I'm just going to double check and make sure that we have no other advisories. So at this point in time, there's absolutely no advisories of any kind, rip current statements, anything going on with the weather locally here at 1:30 on this Monday. So let's break down what's going to be happening with the storms. I'll bring up our friendly HER bottle here. It'll take me just 1 second to readjust it. as we were looking at Erin. Let's bring that up. We'll start this afternoon, and we'll go out to Wednesday morning. So, East Coast sea breeze is still going to be the dominant feature that should push these storms towards the West Coast. We do have this decent looking spin and certainly a shear axis coming along with this in the eastern and eventually into the central Gulf. But again, it's a huge area of rain, but it is moving away from our area. So not expecting there outside of later today with some south winds along the West Coast to have direct impacts with this. Again, not expected to develop tropically, but a very interesting feature for this time of the year, very close to home. So we are going to see the beginning an east breeze push the storms towards the East Coast. But at the mid-levels of the atmosphere, the winds are out of the south right now. So we are going to get kind of a northwest push with the storms rather than due west. So beginning at 3 o'clock today, we'll start to see a couple of scattered storms, easy for me to say, develop in interior locations, places like Cibolo and Orange County, Osceola County, Polk County could start to see the initial initiation, with the storms kind of becoming a little bit more widespread 5 and 6 o'clock. I do expect them to line up a little bit more later today across I-75 and then work their way off towards the west. Now they're going to meet the West Coast sea breeze, which is going to stay pinned along the West Coast. And that's where the storms could slow up and produce some heavier rain and some gusty winds. So at this point in time, I am expecting Marion and Sumter and Citrus and Hernando and Pasco, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, and Sarasota counties to have the best opportunity for some of the more active weather later on this Monday. You know, we could get a special weather statement here or there. I'll monitor what's going to be happening with the winds. Would expect them to stay below severe thunderstorm criteria. Would expect any hail threat to stay below severe thunderstorm criteria as well. But we've had some heavy rain here, and locally heavy downpours and some stronger thunderstorms are possible. Places like Ocala, on over towards Crystal River, Inverness, the Villages, Spring Hill, Dade City, Clearwater, Tampa, St. Pete, Bradenton, Sarasota, all with that chance. We should quiet down as we head overnight and then see a few more showers as a possibility developing along our East Coast tomorrow morning. They'll be hugging the coast, but if you live in places like Satellite Beach and Any Atlantic and on over towards Melbourne Beach and even towards Palm Bay, and the Melbourne area itself, Merritt Island, a passing shower in the morning or developing right off the coast is not out of the question. Then for our Tuesday afternoon, we're going to get just a little bit more in the way of storms developing with the south winds. The east and the west coast sea breezes should be merging together a little bit more inland tomorrow, which should push some of the best activity back in interior locations. So we'll get a little bit of a nudge of the west coast sea breeze to come inland. Once again, we'll have old outflow boundaries from the thunderstorms today, and this should fire up initiation along I-4 towards I-75. So maybe not as much across US 19 for tomorrow, but we should get some decent storms developing here. And again, locally heavy downpours, gusty winds where these storms develop 40 to 50 mile an hour winds from time to time. And obviously lightning a big impact for this time of the year. And then the storms fading as we get into Wednesday morning. It's still going to be darn hot the next couple of days. Look for feels like temperatures to get to 103 to maybe even 107 in a couple of areas with the scattered thunderstorms that we would expect here. It is going to be more our, typical sea breeze interaction as this activity begins to pull away. But rain chances overall, the next few afternoons are still going to be on the higher side. When we look at the total precipitation from the HRRR model, and I'll take it out to our Wednesday morning, again, you'll clearly see that we favor I-4 west. Pockets of heavier rain, which could be 2 to 4 inches in a couple of locations. I hope we don't get inundated with the, up to 10 inches of rain we had yesterday in southern Pinellas County and the flash flood warnings. Not as concerned about hitting that flooding criteria for today. And tomorrow, if I show you guys the excessive rainfall outlook, it's still going to be I-75 to US 19. There is still a very low end chance for some flooding today in these areas that I just pointed out, but the greater chance is, again, Nature Coast, Big Bend, along the coastal sides of the Panhandle. They're getting up to a 10 to 15% chance of seeing some flash flooding in those areas. We're at the 5 to 10 and probably a little bit closer to the 5. If you live in Orlando, you live across I-95, we're going to get some thunderstorms, but we're not going to get anything in the way of any rain that should produce severe storms or heavier rainfall. As a matter of fact, we're under that general risk for severe thunderstorms, not expecting anything organized to happen over the next few afternoons. So let's get into your city by city forecast. Just got a couple for you guys real quick. Let's bring that up. Wrong one. All right, here we go. Orlando. Again, higher than normal rain chances the next few days. Tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, 70% chance for storms. Feels like temperature tomorrow is going to hit 103 in Orlando, so 94 with a 103 feels like temperature. It's even hotter on Wednesday. It's gross. 96 the daytime high. That south wind not helping things out. 95 on Wednesday, a 60% chance for storms, mid to upper 70s for morning lows. It's August in Central Florida. We're going to get the sea breezes to be active. We're going to get some storm initiation with the south winds. It's going to be pretty widespread. Again, we're back into school now. The kids have outdoor practices. Just make sure, you keep them hydrated as much as you can. Make sure that they drink plenty of water. Make sure you do the same as well. For Tampa, again, starting tomorrow, the sea breeze will push a little bit more inland. There's still going to be high rain chances in Tampa. It'll be a little bit lower in places like St. Pete Beach and Clearwater Beach, and places like that along and west of US 19. But Tampa, interior Hillsborough County, interior sections of Hernando, Citrus, Pasco counties, still going to have a 60% chance up towards Ocala. 104 the feels like temperature tomorrow. 60% chance for storms on Wednesday and Thursday. 94 the daytime high each day. Morning lows there will be in the upper 70s. So stormy conditions in the afternoon. An opportunity to see a stronger storm. It's not out of the question. I don't expect there to be anything organized, but would there be a chance that I'd have to come on and cover these storms for you guys live? It's a possibility. Then I'll be monitoring that situation. Live look outside once again to Winter Garden. Again, we checked this at the beginning of the live stream about a half hour ago. Still the same situation, still very flat clouds, still a lot of blue in the sky. We'll have to wait for the East Coast sea breeze to get into this area to see some vertical development and the opportunity for some storms, but in the short term, we're going to be dry here. A little bit more vertical development with some of the cloud coverage, but still fair weather clouds in the Conway area of downtown Orlando. We are looking off towards the east, so we'll be watching that East Coast sea breeze continue to march in and developing some showers and storms through the afternoon hours as it does so. And again, a little bit more of a murky sky at the attractions area, but not a bad early afternoon there. It's stinking hot. We know that, but as far as any thunderstorms developing around the attractions at the hour, not seeing that. Friends, do you guys have any specific questions about the forecast, either with the chance for storms the next couple of days or with Hurricane Erin that is likely to develop? Again, it's a tropical storm right now, but it is forecast to become a major hurricane by the end of the week. So, a storm that is going to have some potential impacts wherever it goes. It's good to see in the 5-day forecast that it stays away from any landmass, but I think starting on Friday, we're gonna have to monitor that curve. It's all about the curve over the weekend. Does it stay more straight, head to Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas and closer to our East Coast, or does it begin that recurve beginning on Friday and we have a nice little buffer to stay away from us? Jump back in the chat. How you doing? Let's see here. Bobby asks, will upper loft winds change its direction? Are we talking about the hurricane? If we're talking about Erin, the more direct impacts are going to be your surface winds. Now, as a storm gets more vertically stacked and becomes stronger, mid and upper level winds do have more of an influence, because now that storm is vertically stacked enough where those winds at 500 millibars or even up to 300 millibars do begin to have some impact. So the answer, Bobby, is it does, but I'm still more concerned about where the placement of the Bermuda High is going to be and how that's going to be able to turn around that. But if the mid and upper level winds were to turn a little bit more out of the southeast, that could have a little bit more of an impact to drive it a little bit farther. Now, we can look at 300 millibar winds. I need to bring up the GFS real fast. So what Bobby's asking at is like, what are the upper level winds looking like? Let me do this real quick here. I think this is the easiest way to do it. So GFS, 300 millibar winds. We'll go Friday. And I don't want the surface winds or the precip. Now these are only going to show the significant ones right now. So we have a big trough here. We have westerlies, as you would expect, coming off the United States East Coast. So nothing close to the storm. And of course, here, now this is a great indication of what I'm talking about, Bobby. Do you see how there's only arrows right over the storm? It's because the storm on the GFS model is so vertically stacked, it begins to influence the winds that high in the atmosphere. You're not going to see any other arrows across the southern Atlantic. It's only a vertically stacked Erin that gets high enough to begin to influence the winds. So it's a great point, but it's a really interesting feature, right? So the GFS model is like, look, man, this storm is going to be so tall that it's going to start to impact the 300 millibar winds, which is really high in the atmosphere. Other than that, we don't see any steering influence from them, at least on Friday. Here's Saturday, more of a west wind than anything. You know, you would want to see southwest to start to pull it, but it's not the biggest influence. I want to be clear as well. It's still surface winds, but if it is vertically stacked, there's a little bit more of an influence. And then there it is again, right there. There's your vertically stacked storm at 300 millibars. And I bet you those reds are nasty. I wonder if I can query these. I don't know if I ever have. I don't know if I've ever even tried. No, I can't. I'd just be curious to see what number that actually is. But there you go. Great question. Hope that answered it for you. I've heard 20-degree line mentioned a few times. Can you explain it? It's just the north latitude. It's the north latitude of the storm. Where are we at right now? It's not here. Yesterday, when I did it on the weather on the Media Mundo, we were going to be at 21.5 degrees by Friday. So that's just what it means. Trying to bring up the National Hurricane Center. Here we go. Yeah, we're at 17.4 now. So it's just the north latitude, right? South to north. The farther north that you go in the globe, you're going to go higher in the number there. It's about getting above 20 because then you start to try and push it north of the islands. I believe, again, the last forecast I saw for Friday was around 21.5. But that's what that is. It's just a relation to where it is on the globe. We'll have to monitor, Larry. Just shower now. I'm drying my mom back. Oh, I love it. I'm not coming on with a 5 o'clock update here, but on the Media Mundo channel, yes, I will have a brand new extended recorded forecast video for the Media Mundo channel. We'll deep dive into this. Obviously, I cover the Caribbean islands a lot more in that channel, you know, breaking down what's happening here. On this channel, I'm going to always talk about how these tropical systems would impact our area. You know, we can talk a little bit about it, especially the Bahamas, because, you know, they're very close to home. But this channel will always focus on Florida impacts for the hurricanes and the tropical systems. And then the Media Mundo channel will focus on the Caribbean and the Bahamas for the impacts. I'll include Florida as well. Kristen, you don't have anything to worry about, I believe, even on Sunday. It would be close. You know, I would expect there to still be a buffer on Sunday, even if this were directly headed here. Now, you might want to be back and prepping if that's the case, but again, that's such a low-end chance right now. You know, I think my parents are going to the East Coast this weekend, and I would not tell them to change their plans at this point in time. There's just way too much as a possibility, you know, the range of outcomes so far with Erin to be making any kinds of plan changes to, especially travel here in Florida. I would absolutely keep going. I'll keep you guys up to date. Okay, I think we're good with this live stream. First of all, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for those who have found ways to support the channel via our super thanks. Thank you for subscribing as well. Please remember that CFLW is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. They're important, my friends. Look, they cover the entire state of Florida. You storm in an area, you get wind, hail, hurricane damage, even a burst pipe. You want an advocate on your side. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. They offer free consultation and policy review, so you really have nothing to lose. And you want to support someone who supports the channel, I do recommend you check out leanonmelaw.com. As always, if there's going to be impactful weather here in Central Florida with some of the thunderstorms that are developing, I'll be back on live, whether that's sometime later today or tomorrow or Wednesday or Thursday, just whenever there's impactful weather. So always have those notifications on, always have the all notifications on. Again, I'm not going to inundate you with notifications on the channel because I'm only on where there's something to talk about. And of course, these Monday and Friday shows, we discuss what's going to be happening for the week. And then on Friday, it's the weekend show. You can watch this live, and I appreciate those who do. You can always watch this as a recorded video. When I get done, this becomes a recorded video on the live tab of the CFLW YouTube channel. You can watch it at your leisure. Of course, I love the interaction with you guys. So thanks so much for those who are tuning in live. But even if you're not and you have a question, you can drop it in the comment section below. I go back and check out those comments and I'll answer those questions. Several of you do, or many of you do watch the recorded version sometime later today or tomorrow as well. All right, so monitoring the storms the next few days. Nothing that I'm overtly concerned about, but we could still get some stronger storms. And there's that situation. I'll jump on live. If nothing else, I'll see you guys Friday at 1 o'clock for the next CFLW show. Obviously, by Friday, we're going to have a lot better idea on what's going to be happening with Hurricane Erin. If there's a situation or a reason to come back on even before then and talk about the storm, I don't see so. I will. If there is very interesting information to pass along, I can do that via the posts. And obviously, if I'm live for the storms, we can talk about Erin as well. So a lot to watch out for the week ahead and early next week with both these storms at home and Tropical Storm Erin, which is expected again to become a major hurricane. Friends, I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for hitting the like button and subscribing on the way out. And I'll see you soon whenever the weather is impactful here in Central Florida. Until then, take care. Check, check.